be a different kind of forum, and we thought we'd start by making them sit in a really uncomfortable couch and get real close and cozy. The other way we want tonight to be different is this. We went out to many communities and constituents to see how can we make a conversation about Capitol Hill be really meaningful. And one of the things we heard a lot about is we don't want to have the candidates talk about the negativity of the other person tonight. We actually want to hear about their dreams, vision, goals, their thoughts about Capitol Hill and Seattle in the future. So one of the roles the gong will play is this. If I or Michael believe, thank you very much for that demonstration. If anyone's as old as I am, then you did in fact watch the Gong Show, and you know we will use it. So if we believe that comments are veering toward criticism of the other person, we're going to let the gong rip. We will also let it rip if we believe the rhetoric is just empty. We'll let it rip if we hear certain words. Yes, it's very much a value judgment. Absolutely a value judgment. There are certain words that some people feel they've heard so much they don't know what they mean anymore. One of those words is progressive. One is vibrant. And funny enough, people don't want to hear parking tonight. So we're going to gong very randomly those three words. I might throw in a few others for fun. So that's the gong concept. I promise, won't go overboard with that, but we hope you understand. We let the candidates know we want tonight to be about vision, and we don't so much want to be in the trenches. So here's the other part. The audience could get gonged too. So I'm going to try to involve you as quickly as I can in the dialogue, because I know that I can't stand when I wait for a 50-minute program, and then for 2 minutes there's audience participation. So I'm going to do what I can to go out to you. Alethea is running around with the microphone, actually for now she's standing. And when I yell out to you, make noise, because obviously it's dark, it's a bar, we might not see you. She'll come out to you, we'll filter the questions, we'll get them to the candidates. We also have Twitter going on, and if you have your phone working in here, there is apparently open Wi-Fi, because otherwise the service isn't that great. And the hashtag is CapHillMayor. Is that it? Is that right? CapHillMayor. CapHillMayor, okay? So you can, if you're all the way in the back and you want to keep on drinking, you can tweet your question up here, which perhaps is a new high or low in social media. And we would tweet from the back of the room. We can vote on that later too. So what the candidates were asked to do to start the night, and then I'll move it forward into a sort of question and dialogue part, the candidates were just asked to open up with very brief statements about what they see, the coming questions, vision, ideas for Capitol Hill. Very specifically tonight, not the entire city, but Capitol Hill, because we feel that Capitol Hill in some ways is a real bellwether for the rest of the city, and obviously sits at a nexus of multiple converging things that are quite positive and challenging in terms of the identity of the city moving forward. So we've asked the candidates to just have very brief opening remarks about that, so I'll turn to them for that. We'll start, let's see, you're sitting closer to the microphone. We'll start with you.
Sure. Okay. I'm not going to be able to do that multiple times, but I'll do it for the opening. So Capitol Hill is an absolutely fantastic neighborhood and has so much wonderful things to offer. So when I think about the future of Capitol Hill, there's a bunch of different things I think about. One is it's such an artistic and creative place. You know, one of the 12th best in the nation. So we're going to continue to invest in our arts and public spaces. We put more money into the Egyptian. 12th Avenue Arts is another example. And it also combines with something else. We also want to be a place where every income level can be. So 12th Avenue Arts was an East Precinct parking lot, and now there's going to be affordable housing there. We're working on the Capitol Hill TOD around the light rail station to make sure there's more affordable housing there. We'll look at different innovative housing types. Innovative is still a safe word, I understand. It'll be connected to, fair enough, and that's, you know, we'll be connected to rail. And actually rail will be getting further. It'll be getting out into the region, and if we're successful in getting Sound Transit 3 to the ballot, it'll be heading out to Ballard and other neighborhoods in the city as well. And if our transit master plan is successful, we'll have the streetcar extending to more places as well as use Madison as a really high quality electric trolley bus line. You know, inline stops, pay in advance, and we're doing the planning on all of those things right now. You got a cycle track, one of the first in the city coming in. There's one up on Linden Avenue North. There's another one you can get around on foot or by bike as well. Great local businesses. We launched something called Only in Seattle. We're giving granting money to local businesses. You come to this city, you find businesses that are unique to here. And that's a great thing about our city. So we'll keep supporting our local businesses as well. And I mentioned, I'm circling back to arts. We're at record-setting levels for arts investments in the city as well. So, safe. We want you to know your police officers. We want police officers to be drawn from the city. We want them out of their cars and walking around, and we want our places designed to be safe, and we want the community working together to keep it safe. And we also want to make sure it's a place of opportunity for everyone in the city, and I'm going beyond Capitol Hill, but things like education, job training. You know, when the city has beautiful things to offer and it's so attractive, it should work for everybody in the city too. And really great on the environment, because we got the Bullet Foundation building, which is setting a standard for what it means to be environmentally sustainable. With that walking, biking, transit, green buildings, we can divest from fossil fuels and feel good about it, because we're pointing the way to a fossil fuel-free future here. Thank you.
And you're right, it's hard getting off that couch. Yeah, we may just stand up.
Stand up, what's it?
So, hi, Ed Murray. I'm running for mayor of Seattle. I have lived on Capitol Hill for 29 years. Capitol Hill has been my home for 29 years. My husband, I almost said partner, he's my husband now, have lived on the north end of the hill for the last 18 years. So I've seen this hill change so many times. I've seen a vibrant hill. I saw a hill that died.
On the opening statement, we'll give you a little grace. Just on the opening statement, a little grace.
I can't believe I did that. So we've seen the hill go through tough times. We've seen the hill come back. The hill's coming back. It is Seattle's first urban village. It is a place where you can walk and use transit like nowhere else in Seattle. I've been just happy to represent you for 18 years. We've been able to do things together with the city, finding state money to help build Cal Anderson Park, to put new buildings at Seattle Community College's campus, hopefully someday to actually re-landscape that campus so it fits in with the hill and with Broadway in particular. We fought against those who tried to stop light rail, so light rail's actually coming here. We put money into arts like Hugo House, among others, and that's the kind of thing I want to continue to do as your mayor. We have some real huge challenges. Affordable housing is one of them. I couldn't afford to live in the house I live in today, and I bet I couldn't afford to rent that apartment I used to rent back in the 80s and 90s. We need a strategy, a new strategy, that actually looks at a variety of, can't say innovative, right? A variety of techniques where we can actually bring down the cost of housing so that the people who came here when I came here, and most of us came here because we were trying to find someplace safe, because we weren't safe in our own homes, we weren't safe in our own neighborhoods, and that's why the LGBT community ended up on Capitol Hill. But at the time, it was a place that was also affordable. We have to keep it affordable, so that it's still a place that people come to who are young, who want to break out, break loose, and be safe. So I don't want to go on too long, but I look forward to talking about other things such as education and healthcare. This is day 3 of Obamacare, my friends. Be sure that you're signing up anyone you know who doesn't have insurance. We have a real opportunity to change healthcare. And again, Capitol Hill is the center of healthcare for Seattle. So thanks very much.
So when we were considering the outrageous number of topics we had to cover tonight, we hadn't thought about Obamacare. So that we got a bonus program. So couple things. I want everyone to know that those statements were the longest that we'll let the candidates talk all night in any one chunk. Because what we've heard a lot of is that people want to move it along and be much more dialogue-driven than speech-driven. So I'm going to interrupt them a lot more often, and I hope you understand that that's what the people wanted. So there's that, and also that'll be the last time you stand during your answers. You'll be on the couch the rest of the time, okay? All right. So we are going to start tonight. We decided that we had to find an organizing principle for all of the topics. So one idea was to go with live, work, and play. So we're going to start with the live section, and both candidates alluded to this, and I think some voters feel that one of the challenges in this race is that they hear a lot of the same things from the candidates, that they both care about affordable housing, for example. So our opening question tonight is, in fact, about the rent is too damn high question. So we want to ask the candidates, can they just quickly give us a sense of what role they believe government can play in terms of affordable housing? Specifically, what can the mayor do in terms of rallying a team, and what can they do about affordable housing? Keeping in mind that there have been apparently some cautionary tales from places like San Francisco where there were attempts at tons of regulation in affordable housing that actually backfired. So we wanted to ask them, if we were to be careful not to solve problems before we really know what they're made out of, what do they really believe is a way to deal with affordable housing? So what we're going to do is just try to be fair, so we'll have Ed, you get to go first, and you're staying on the couch.
Thank you for letting me stay on the couch. So I think it's going to take a variety of strategies to get at the issue of affordable housing so that we don't end up like some of the other cities you referred to, like San Francisco. I think that we have to find a way to really find the incentives for developers to build part of it. That's part of the answer. But the city also gets all the permits. You know, if you're going to build a building, if you're going to build a high-rent apartment building, you get permitted by the city. So we need to capture that data, try and figure out what's happening, analyze it, and try and put some programs in place that can get at it. You know, not just using incentives, but in some cities, for like teachers who often can't afford to live in a city, the city or a nonprofit in the city buy down part of the mortgage so people can afford to live there. The city has, and Mayor and I have both talked about this, as surplus land, the opportunity to actually build on that, which could bring down the price. So it's going to have to be a variety of strategies. It's not just going to be one strategy. Micro-housing, particularly on the Hill, I think is another tool that can be put in the box to bring down the price of rents and housing.
Yeah, the basic issue is we are seeing many more jobs created than housing units, and just the price is now getting bid up. So we've spoken about a few. One is taking a look at the housing levy renewal, which helps subsidize affordable housing, and we have to look at how high we can go and still have voter support, and I'd support doing that. Different types of housing is definitely part of it. The micro housing and other housing types matter. I'm going to say affordable transportation matters too. For most people, the second highest household expense after housing is transportation. A good public transit system really puts money in your pocket, and that's another piece of the puzzle. When I spoke about the East Precinct parking lot, we're putting that into affordable housing, and we gave Sound Transit some additional height so that they would include more low-income housing in the properties they own around the light rail station, and we're looking at that up and down the light rail line as well. Trying to reduce some of the costs, requiring when we required more parking than people needed, it drove up the cost.
Sorry, that means you have been gonged. So I'm gonna push a little, and then I want to go to the audience on something. I want to push on this. I've heard both of you say some interesting things about affordable housing in general. Can you say anything specifically about Capitol Hill? There's some concern that only very specific demographic is currently able to live on Capitol Hill. So maybe specifically the affordable housing question for Capitol Hill, and very briefly, if each of you get a chance to kind of add to your answers.
Do you want to expand on what you meant by a specific demographic?
Well, people are talking about the fact that specifically it's mostly young single men who are wealthy or working in software industry who can afford to live here. Am I taking all the information I've received online correctly? People are concerned about that.
No, I think that's part of the micro apartments issue. That's part of the subsidy issue. The other thing we're looking at is that when we give more height for development, can we require developers to incorporate affordable units and different sizes of units in the property itself. We have a stakeholder group looking at that question as well. Rather than just paying a fee to have it built somewhere else, we may get more housing units out of that as well. And the other thing I was actually looking at today, this doesn't quite go to creating new housing, but requiring longer notice periods if you're going to get a notice to relocate. Because of, right now, if it's more than 10%, you get 60 days. I'm talking to Councilmember Licata of if it's more than 20%, then you should get 90 days. You know, actually putting more barriers against rapid increases, seeing what we can do about that, as well as improving the amount of relocation assistance we give.
Did you want to add anything there? Sure, I just wanted to know if you could add to the comments about affordable housing, specifically to some of the challenges on Capitol Hill.
Well, I think one of the things we've been able to do at the state level is to continue to increase during the good years the Housing Trust Fund. And that has helped Capitol Hill bring down the price of housing stock for affordable and low-income housing. So that's one of the places, one of the partnerships we need to continue to look at.
And I want to go out to the audience and ask, is there anything about affordable housing that you haven't heard? And remember, we can gong you too, it has to be new. And Alethea can come to you.
Is rent control not on the table?
Yeah. So the question for the back was, is rent control not on the table?
Nobody's talked about it.
So, you know, this comes up in my time in the legislature every few years. And you remember before the Great Recession hit, the issue was apartments were being converted to condos, and we were losing apartments. And then the Great Recession hit, and then the condos are being reconverted to apartments. So every time we go through one of these, the issue of rent control comes up. My position has been, if the city is interested, you know, the state has to change the law on rent control. The city doesn't have that authority. My position has been, if there is a city, or if the city of Seattle wants that authority, I would work towards that authority. I think it's a very questionable tool about how you apply it, and there's been sometimes you get the reverse. Sometimes you get people who got in young and are there for 40 years, and young people can't come in. But so to date, there's never been any big movement to ask us to do rent control. And I think it has to do because of what I said earlier about people get in it, and then the next generation doesn't get in it.
Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, state law does prohibit us from taking up rent control. We would have to change state law to take that up locally.
Okay, anyone burning? Because we do have so many topics. Anything burning specifically?
Claire, I'm gonna go to the back.
Alethea's on the move. Oh, she may not be gone. Can the person in the back give us some good vocal cords? Yeah.
Short leash here. Don't ask me.
I see a lot of new buildings being built in Capitol Hill with enormous lots where people can leave their cars when they're not driving them. Which I think.
Nice. I don't know what the opposite of a gong is, but you just got it.
Which is the building that I live in, 15 of Pine, would be one of them. It's called Fox Apartments. I believe requiring developers to build these into buildings pushes up the rent. Do you have any feelings about letting those requirements go?
We have eliminated minimums in places like, for the most part in places like this. We've also eliminated minimum requirements for low-income housing. I suppose the next question is, are we going to start taking up maximums? We've let the development community, we've let the owner of the property decide how much they'll install for their own marketing purposes. So, but this is something I strongly support. I've got a lot of heat for it in other places, not requiring it in buildings where there's where you got good transit nearby. And that's more and more the city. We're hoping to make more and more the city.
I agree with the mayor. You know, in a neighborhood like this where there are other transit options, I think that you can reduce the number of parking that go into a building. So we agree. Did I say?
All right. So that's good. That's actually, it's helpful because as important as this topic ideas to everyone. There are so many others, so I'm going to move us on. I promised we'd do some quickie palate cleanser questions tonight, and I have the first one for you. Here's a palate cleanser, and this answer is meant to be very quick, okay? Up through the Nichols administration, name the most effective Seattle mayor and why? Very quickly.
I like Mayor Rice because of his emphasis on education.
I would choose Norm Rice too because of his ability to work across a whole group of people, and it was a pretty stable time in city government. I actually worked in city government at that time as well, so I kind of saw it up close.
All right, that was quick and good. There you go. Okay, so lots of folks wanted us to talk about crime tonight, and we're hoping to frame the question a little differently. Obviously, it's a very emotional topic. And one of the things we want to ask the candidates, we want to ask for you to sort of reach to talk about this a little differently. We know that both of you have spoken about some possible solutions. We want to make sure we're identifying the right problem. So first we want to know, what do you believe is a problem specifically about crime and policing on Capitol Hill? Again, on Capitol Hill. Do you believe the police are serving all of the people who live and work on Capitol Hill equally? And can you try to answer a question about solving the quote-unquote crime problem, understanding it's very emotional for people who have experienced it, but also understanding that some people are concerned we might overreact. So can you give us some thoughts that might go a little deeper than sort of usual policy wonk answer about how you feel about the nature of the problem of crime on Capitol Hill?
Well, first, I guess as someone who lives up here, who has a campaign office up here, there has been an increase in crime on the Hill. And I hear that from folks who I know and folks who approach me. Having said that, I think it's very important to sort some things out. The first thing to sort out is, homeless people are not the criminals. Homeless people are often the victims of criminals. And I think in some people's minds that have all been, the issue of homelessness and crime have been rolled up into one problem, and I think you've got to sort those things out. And again, we have a real opportunity to start to deal with those homeless people who have addiction or mental health problems, because again, for the first time in the history of this country, they can get mental health insurance along with their regular insurance. That's why I keep emphasizing the Obamacare thing, a real opportunity to get them treatment paid for that'll keep them off the streets. The woman who runs youth care pointed out to me that she can save a significant amount of money in the tens of thousands of dollars by getting those young people signed up. It'll allow her to get more young people off the streets. So that is part of the crime problem. The other part of the crime problem, I believe, and Mary and I may disagree on this, that we need more police. We need to go back to New York. They call it posts now. They don't call it beats. You actually have people who have a section that they walk. They know the store owners. They know the people who live in the streets. They know the characters who might be a problem. So I think it's a combination of those two things.
So the first question is, what is the nature of crime or disorder, and what are we dealing with? And it is an emotional issue. When I first took office, the issue was around anti-panhandling legislation, and we have a very well-trod way, we have a very well-rehearsed way of entering that debate. And sure enough, everybody divided. It was very divisive, where those that were for enforcement and those who were for compassion. So what we've tried to do, what we've been working on downtown, is actually bringing people together who have first-hand knowledge of all of these issues to reach common ground. And so we have the business owners, the social service providers, the agencies, the police, all at the same table together to talk about it. And so, and each different problems require different solutions. For individuals who clearly don't have, who have mental health issues, and the fact is that nationwide, there's been the deinstitutionalization movement has meant cities have borne the brunt of people who have serious mental health issues who aren't receiving treatment. And for them, we have to figure out a more intense way of monitoring people who don't meet the level of commitment, but clearly are decompensating. And we're actually talking right now, I've pulled together a working group to talk about that. There are people with low-level substance abuse problems. And we've launched something called Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. It's Belltown, downtown, and we'll hope to keep expanding it, and we believe it's successful. You direct, low-level offenders directly to treatment rather than arresting and putting them through the system that may or may not connect. It is important to have more police officers and more police officers out of their cars in the places where it's important. And in fact, over the last year or so, we've added 52 new officers to the authorized levels of the force. We've also added more park rangers who really are force multipliers because they can connect directly with the police. And we've added 3 more police officers to work directly with the rangers. Other issues are more, the people who are sleeping on the ball field when the team wants to come to play. So we now have a field supervisor at Cal Anderson Park. So these are all parts of the solution, and some things aren't criminal, they're just disturbing. Some things are criminal, and for low-level crimes, we now have, for people who repeatedly don't follow the rules, which isn't a crime, it's just an infraction, but it can be a misdemeanor for failure to respond to infractions. We're actually working with our city attorney and the police department to have consequences for people who never follow the rules. So we're trying to get support, political support from conservative, liberal, business, social service around what's the right response to the right problem and bring the resources
I'm going to
into
cut
it.
you off because it was going too long.
I was just finishing.
Okay, I'm gonna push because I know I've read some things on Twitter and I suspect some people in the audience want to ask this. So I'm going to push a little pushback. There, the people who work and serve in the very lively, because I'm not going to use that V word, the very lively nightlife scene on Capitol Hill, the employees are terrified to walk home at 3 o'clock in the morning. And they have seen a rash of armed robberies. And people want to know what's going on with so many armed robberies at 7 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock in the morning. And specifically, a Capitol Hill problem is so many young people are servers and are walking home. So I want to push a little harder. What are we going to do about that?
So I can speak to that. And you see it in the U District too when college starts. There are people who come and pray and look for someone that's unsuspecting and do that. And it's oftentimes if you can identify and get the right people, you can see it go down, because it's usually, somebody doesn't do this once. It's usually a group of people who do it repeatedly. So we're working different types of operations to try to catch the perpetrators as well as prevent it. I also think we have to look at community-based solutions about how do we get people home safely late at night, and there could be a different variety of ways to do that. We'll work on that. We even left the lights on at Cal Anderson Park, and we're looking at a SEPTED review. How do we clean up the parks to get better sight lines? Different things to try to prevent it. But there are predators out there, and we do have to work together to protect ourselves from them and to catch them.
Ed?
Thanks. So back to the nature of it, and then to get into the question you just asked. As I said, I hear from folks, crime is up, and it's up in this neighborhood. And it's particularly up in the part of the neighborhood in the Pike Pine corridor where we have this incredible nightlife. How about it? And one of the things we've seen that we haven't seen for a long time is gay bashings back on the Hill. And there was several decades ago when I was young and we were going through a rash of that. We spent time particularly with the police so that they could be trained to identify behaviors or types of behaviors that were going to happen before they're happening. Because this place is so popular now, you've got people who come from different places than Capitol Hill, who maybe don't understand the diversity of our culture and who've been bad actors. And I think identifying those, training the police to identify those, is one of the ways we address that problem.
I'm double checking if there's anything I should go to on Twitter.
I saw one on there that
Yes.
I want to ask. This is specifically for Ed Murray, and it's a mean question, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We're used to those.
Can you talk about your role in the state budget cutbacks for mental health?
Sure. We went through a pretty tough time at the state level. We lost $20 billion in anticipated state revenue.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt. I actually have to gong the question because we said specifically that we weren't going to.
But I'd really like to answer it.
All right, I'll give you a minute to do that.
Okay. You know what? Every single Democrat, but 2 in the Senate voted for the budget, and every single Democrat, but 1, I think, in the House voted for that budget, because we fought to preserve programs. The bottom was falling out of the economy. People wanted to eliminate a lot of programs in mental health and human services, things like the HEN program. We fought to preserve them. Yeah, those were really difficult votes. We passed taxes. The voters turned down those taxes. But there are programs that exist today. Talk to Planned Parenthood. They were happy that we preserved their program. And part of our strategy was to keep those programs in place so that when the economy came back, we could grow those programs again. Once a program's eliminated, it's really hard to bring it back in state government.
Okay, let me go out to the audience and just see if there's anything about crime that this audience really is burning to ask. And maybe let's expand our horizons a little and not specifically talk about crime, but about how we all live together in a place where we have a lot of wealth inequity that's exacerbated almost daily, and lots of challenges about how to share our environment. That seems important. I guess we have a question brewing down here.
So I'm a gay man and living in Capitol Hill. I live like about 8 blocks from here. I've lived here since 1998, and in the last year, I actually feel unsafe that I bought pepper spray and I bought a taser. I've never done that before in my life. I feel unsafe, so I want you, Mayor McGinn, and also Ed Murray, to tell me, how can you make me feel safe that I won't have to use pepper spray or a taser? I mean, I've never done this before, but I feel unsafe. I've lived here since 1998.
Sure. I think. Did you go first last time? I think we go first this time. Yeah.
So, and we've been here before. It's just amazing that we're back here 20 years later. First of all, let me go back to what I said. We need to spend some time, I think, going back to our police and being sure that they understand this issue and training them. Second, we need to recognize that there are people coming up here to enjoy the nightlife who are not used to a diverse community. And often, LGBT people are the easiest to pick on after you've had a few drinks. Third, I really believe that the city should lead an effort with our community-based organizations in the LGBT community to design some programs to get at this, because it's not just an issue of training police, it's also an issue of training us. Those of you who are old enough to remember Q Patrol, that came out of the community. It made a difference on Broadway. You know, the first gay and lesbian anti-violence project in the nation was started in New York City by a guy named David Wertheimer. He lives in Seattle. We should bring those resources together with the police, with the city, and get at this problem, because it's a multifaceted problem. And maybe we need to do a little training in bars and restaurants for some people who come from other neighborhoods about who we are while they're sitting at the bar. So when they go outside after a few drinks, they won't think that queers are the people they should knock around.
By the way, I know how you feel. I actually one time taking the 358 bus home to my neighborhood of Greenwood. I get off by 85th and Aurora. About a half block from Aurora, was held up at gunpoint on my way home at about 10 at night. Yeah. No, I was not the mayor at the time. I was just a guy coming home from work at night, and I was in my neighborhood. It's about a block and a half from home, and nothing was terrible happened. I like to feel like I'm safe in my neighborhood, but I can tell you, I actually don't walk on that street at night anymore because of that memory. So I know how you feel, and I want you to, we all want to feel safe in our own neighborhoods. I think that there is a big piece of this is a community taking action together with the police to address it. The police are the formal guardians, but the people are the informal guardians of a community. And I do think there's room for us to begin figuring out how we can, again, begin working together and start looking at the, programs about how we can pair up, or how we can get late night movement, how we can look out for folks that are not appropriate in the neighborhood. And I'm not, you know what I mean. Cameras on the street too, from private businesses. I know we've had concerns about cameras that are owned by the city because of privacy concerns. But I'll tell you, those cameras, when private businesses have them, make a huge difference in capturing people. And once you capture somebody, they won't prey on somebody else. So there's a host of different things we can do, but the partnership thing, I think, is a big one.
Okay, so I'm being told by my timekeepers that I have to press on. So I have a specific question that was given to us. Given that the community has many desires for the Sound Transit development site on Broadway, community space, affordable retail, affordable housing, LGBT community center, active plaza, farmers market, what do you think is the most important element to be included? And this one's got to be brief.
Okay. So that's why I'm really, really proud of the planning work and the work that's done by the community itself to define what they want. It's one of the lessons as a mayor is you gotta let the community define its own community in a lot of ways. And I'm excited about the farmers market and the LGBTQ community center, the affordable housing. I think the team, the Capitol Hill champions and the others who've been working on this have been doing a fabulous job. Now there's more to be done, but that was incorporated into the agreement we reached with Sound Transit to try to capture those community goals.
Can we add like a homophobic jarhead re-education center? Because that sounds like maybe that's where we force people to watch Will and Grace on a loop tape over and over.
Sandy, just
Daddy, that's a much better idea. Yeah.
you go out, you organize the neighborhood, you get, see what you can do on that one. We'll follow you if you can get there.
Okay, gosh, you want me to pick one? Really?
That was the question
So,
I was told to ask.
You know, so I would choose affordable housing first, but it doesn't mean I don't support the idea of the center or the rest. I also think part of this, though, is we have an opportunity to pair with the state and redevelop the area around Seattle Central Community College that is completely underutilized and could be part of that whole, both sides of the street. I mean, you know, that kind of sunken park doesn't really function for anything.
Okay, so we're going to do another palate cleanser. We're going to move from the live section to the work section of the questions. So this palate cleanser question, and we're going to ask the candidates to be brave and honest. If anyone here is a golfer, you know there's a concept called getting a mulligan, where you screw up a shot, you get a do-over. This is a basic question. During this campaign, if you were given one do-over, where this audience gave you dispensation and said, it's taken back, we never heard it, saw it, it didn't happen, what's one thing you would take a mulligan on from this campaign thus far? All right, just grab one.
I was going to say that I'm acronym challenged and I screw up acronyms, but actually I would say that I gave an interview to Publicola trying to explain a timeline on a rather controversial issue, and it looked like I was accusing other people and not taking responsibility. And if I could take something back, that's the thing I would take back.
Mike?
Nothing against Publicola.
Oh, God. I have to admit, I'm
You don't want me to ask the audience to help?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I can take the heat. I can take the heat on anything. You know, I was asked at some point by the Seattle Times whether crime was down, and I answered yes. And I also answered we take crime seriously. And I wish I just said we take crime seriously. Crime is in fact down, but it was perceived to mean that I didn't care. In fact, we do care. We're trying to put a ton of resources into it, but that's been used against me repeatedly.
Those are good ones. So thank you both for being direct and honest. Really, that was great. Really appreciate it. So we're going to move to the work section of Life on Capitol Hill, and the first question that we've been asked to ask is this. As we understand it, you're both for a $15 minimum wage in this city. How does that get implemented, and how does it play out specifically on Capitol Hill?
So I think it has to be phased in. I think we have to work with businesses. Not every business, particularly small businesses, can handle that all at once. I also think that it is an issue of, well, it's a very complicated issue. So I'll stop there. We should do it. We should find a way to phase it in. We should be sure that we don't actually hurt small businesses when we do it. We should target big box stores and the big chain restaurants
But
first.
since Capitol Hill doesn't have as many big box stores, how do you think that means the rollout of that specifically impacts Capitol Hill in a different way?
Well, probably yes, because Capitol Hill, most businesses are 3 or fewer people who are employees.
You know, again, it's going back to you have to hear from people before you implement, and so I do think you have to hear from everybody. I think there's lots of different ways to do it. You know, the CTAC proposal, as you know, is focusing on the major hotels and the port employer itself, which is the airport. And, you know, that raises questions about what's fair or not. Should it extend to more than that? And you do want to care about small businesses.
I appreciate that, but we got to stick to Capitol Hill for tonight.
I know. Well,
Okay.
I'm talking about those things because I think it informs the discussion here, as you mentioned yourself. I have to admit, the more I talk to workers, the more supportive I become of this $15 an hour minimum wage, and the faster I think we should move the timeline on it. And the idea that we have to move it locally as well. I think it's a bigger issue with nationwide strikes. I would love to see our national Democrats take this up as a rallying cry. I'd love to see our state Democrats, it's a statewide issue, take it up as a rallying cry. But if we're going to take it up as a rallying cry here, we can do that too.
Okay, so I have several more work questions, but I want to do a little audience check-in. Do we have some questions about, specifically about the life of workers on Capitol Hill that you want to push on before I go to my next couple of questions? And Alethea will be ready to come to you. That's all right. And if not, that's okay. I've got plenty more here. Okay, I want to ask a question about what's being termed affordable retail. So while we have so much lively nightlife, selling booze obviously brings in a lot of money, but there are a lot of other kinds of businesses and a lot of other kinds of arts and culture we want to see thrive here. So people are wondering, should we worry as much about affordable retail as we do about affordable housing? And wonder if both candidates would talk about that.
I think the answer to that question is yes. We should worry about affordable retail. And part of it has to do with the types of spaces that are offered, you know, to folks and what the new spaces are and what it looks like. You know, in Pike Place Market, we actually have a PDA that helps create affordable retail spaces for certain folks. We're thinking about the same thing in Little Saigon, where you want to keep that. So I do think there are different options we need to explore to try to, you know, allow new businesses to come in. And I don't have answers to that, but those are two examples of where we are. One example where we've done it, one example of where we're looking at it. And we also do a lot of work subsidizing and supporting our small arts organizations. We've also created space, like the old INS building is now Inscape. We've given new market tax credits to that and other subsidies, so that allows for small studio spaces for lots of folks. So there are different things we can do to promote affordable spaces, and we have to keep looking at it because those little startups become other things. And even if they don't, they create so much originality to a neighborhood.
Yes, and I think if you work with an organization, the city works with an organization like Michael Wells' organization, a little call out to Michael Wells. Aren't you going to clap for him, folks? Anyway, you know, your own chamber, your own organization that identifies maybe legacy businesses that are really important but didn't grow and can't afford to be here. That's something you can do. The other thing is today I visited in Greenwood a co-op workspace where folks who don't have an office are able to rent space, meeting rooms, computers, and do their job there because, you know, affordable workspace is another issue.
Well, some people have suggested that we need more office space and affordable office space on Capitol Hill. Do you agree? Quick answer from both of you. Do you agree, and what role does the mayor play in that?
Well, of course, zoning is one of the ways you get at it, but I think, again, I think Capitol Hill, you're looking at models more like what I just mentioned. It's co-op space that folks can share and use versus office towers.
Yeah, zoning can give preferences to certain types of uses over other uses, but we're also often not the best predictors of, you know, the future and where the market's going to. So that can be challenging for us.
Well,
I mean, the INS building and that type of subsidized space is one of the ways we can do that.
But I'm sure a lot of folks would worry that if the INS building had been on the corner of, you know, Pike and 11th, there's no way that that could have been something we would necessarily be able to do that same project in because of its value. In other words, I mean, I'll throw you a direct question. In the future, should we avoid something like the Oddfellows building being sold, and should the city buy it?
You know, it's always a resource question, but then if you take a look at the 12th Avenue art space, you know, because that is city property and we are selling it, it will also be home to some of our nonprofit arts organizations as well. So when it's our own property, of course we have more control. It's always just a resource question of can we afford to buy it, and is that the highest use of our dollars?
So I think if it's an issue of office space, I think it's more of an issue of some of our neighborhood business districts are dead during the day because there is no office workers. So if we're looking at actually trying to bring in particularly incubator companies, the new economy, I won't use the word innovative, but if we're looking at trying to pair some of those with neighborhoods, I think, yes, the city could play a role in that kind of economic development so that the retail space is also used during the day and not just at night. Because as we know, several times in this city, if a neighborhood is just a nightlife neighborhood, the neighborhood tends to, it dies eventually.
What could go wrong? Okay, I know what's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts about their quality of life and work is transportation. So what we want to ask you tonight is to push a little bit beyond the current campaign statements that are out there and talk to us about this. We here on Capitol Hill realize that we're sort of this fulcrum, and increasingly all these points of different kinds of transportation are going to meet here. So what exactly do you do as a mayor and with your team to move more people and goods effectively, considering that so many people have to now they both have to be transported to Capitol Hill to work and be transported away from Capitol Hill to go to work? What will you prioritize?
So I can point to what I'm sorry, did you want to start? Okay. I'm just trying to, I lost track. I just want to grab that mic. So one of the things we did was to identify, we passed a transit master plan, which was to identify the corridors which needed the greatest improvements. 15 corridors are bus-only corridors, 5 others are high capacity. And what we're doing is the planning to kind of develop the alternatives, to tee us up so we can get federal grants, get it included in Sound Transit 3, or invest our own dollars. And I think the way we're going to get there is all of the above. I don't think the state or the region or the feds will ever give us all the money we want for transit, because we love transit so much. We're going to have to add on top of that as well. And that's the purpose of the transit master planning process, is to try to identify the priorities and tee you up to get it. And it's one factoid. 10 years ago, 43% of the cars that went downtown were single occupancy vehicle. Now it's 34%. If it were still 43%, we'd need 12 additional lanes of traffic and 10 square blocks of 10-story tall car storage garages.
That's the opposite gong. You got an opposite gong there. Inverse gong.
So we have to invest in more transit. And walking and biking is a big piece too. We're actually the 5th city in the nation where single occupancy vehicle as commute trips is under 50%. So that's a piece of the solution too. So something like a safe cycle track that's separated, that can attract more users other than the brave. Lots of people can use that.
So I was just remembering when I lived in an apartment off Broadway, I walked to work for 12 years. And I would forget where I parked my car, so I had a little map and I would put a pin so I could remember where to find my car. Back in the days when it was easier to find parking. But to get to the question.
Back in the days when you put a pin on a piece of paper.
Oh, I used parking again. So we need.
I'll give you 2 sentences, even though you've been gone.
Okay.
Okay.
We need to go back through Olympia to get additional authority for light rail. I believe I have the experience and connections to do that. We need to go back to Olympia to get more authority for Metro buses. And I think the reason the Metro bus drivers endorsed my campaign is because I've done it before for them, and I think I could do it as mayor.
And so, quick yes or no question for both of you. Are you for putting a popular vote about Metro, about the city putting more money into Metro? Am I articulating that correctly? That there would be an actual proposition on the ballot that the city would vote for regarding Metro funding? I was asked to ask if both of you are for that.
Not at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I am for it because going through Olympia is hard. And set the hostages free. Let's start investing in our own transit.
Sure, Ed wants to respond. It's a dialogue. You can respond.
So we are never going to get the transit we want unless we develop partnerships with the region and with Olympia. 20 years ago when Sound Transit got started, the East Side didn't like it, we liked it. Now the East Side wants as much light rail as we want light rail. Those are real opportunities for us to work as partners and go down to Olympia and get the authority we need. I think it's about partnerships, not about going it alone.
Yes.
Because we're in a dialogue. Yeah, so just to speak to that, and there's two things going on. One, when we started doing the downtown to Ballard planning, we got Sound Transit to accelerate that. And one of the things that did was it got the rest of the region to think about accelerating all the rest of the Sound Transit planning. So they're now looking at a 2016 ballot measure, which will require help from Olympia. But we got the whole board thinking about that, which is good. We also put together a coalition of 47 mayors around the state to talk about give us more local funding options for transit and local streets. But again, I think our demand is so high, and the rest of the state knows it, that I think we have to start taking some actions that shows we can act independently if we need to.
All right, so I'm going to do one of those palate cleanser questions for a second. If the unthinkable were to happen to each of you, and you woke up the day after Election Day and you were not going to be the next mayor and the continuing mayor of Seattle, what would you still do because you burn to do things for this city? What would you still be engaged in doing for the quality of life in this city? And specifically, if you want to throw any Capitol Hill love in, that would be bonus points. So again, brave and honest.
I'm going to pick out three things, if I may.
They'd be very quick.
But they'll be really quick. I've always been very, very passionate about global warming, and I know that whatever else happened, I think I'd continue that work. I did it before I was mayor, I continue that. There's two sets of relationships I've really enjoyed. I've really enjoyed getting to know our diverse communities, our immigrant and refugee communities, our ethnic communities. I've also really gotten to enjoy knowing more of our artists and creative types in the city as well. It's great to be mayor and say, I'm sorry, honey, I have to go see a show. It's my job, right? And so this has been really fabulous. But I also get to meet people every day. And there's so much love and energy out there for the city and for each other. I'd try to figure out some way to keep tapping into that energy because it's really replenishing.
So I got married 4 days after the primary, so the first thing I would do is take Michael, or he would take me since he makes the money, on a honeymoon. So that would be item number one. Item number, you said three things?
No.
Oh, you did three, okay. So
You can stick with the honeymoon.
Well, the honeymoon, I've always kind of wanted to get a divinity degree, so I might do that. And one of the great things about this campaign, I represent one geographic area in the city, has been really becoming close to the East African community, our largest immigrant community that has some real significant problems. And I'd love to get on a board that would address some of their issues.
Thank you. I understand our time is running short, so short. I'm going to have gotten to 20% of this clipboard, just so you know. But I'm going to go to something I think is very pressing and near and dear to everyone on Capitol Hill so that we get to that before we're out of time. So some people are worried about the loss of dive bars and character on Capitol Hill, having heard that the Comet's closing. Well, it's uncertain at this point. Is that correct? Yes. So here's what people wanted me to ask you. When people look up and they see that the diviest bar we have is serving pork belly and craft cocktails, they're concerned that Capitol Hill is not the place that it used to be. Now, is that just, hey, grow up, get over it, that's the market and that's what happens? Or is there a design element, an urbanist element in caring about the quality of a place remaining? What is your belief system about the role of government in hanging on to the character of Capitol Hill?
Well, I lost part of my 20s at Neighbors, and I'm not sure I would actually want to hold on to that. And I know just more than a few of the bars that...
Oh, that was Michael just kicking it up. No, you can still talk. Michael just felt the need to go on Neighbors, that's all.
The city can always find, and the city does, and the cities always can find ways to assist businesses that are struggling. I don't know how you get dive bars into the zoning code as one of them, but you could look at it. We don't want this to be a gentrified neighborhood. We live up here, and I've stayed up here for 29 years because of the character. Because when I walk down the street, the type of people I see, I can say, oh, I'm on Capitol Hill. I wouldn't see that in Laurelhurst. And part of that, keeping that character, is the people who come and live here. The city can help to some extent, but again, can you suddenly decide that 80s disco music is something the city should preserve? I don't know.
We got the crosswalk and the Baronoff up in Greenwood, so come on up anytime. But this thing that you speak of is very true, right? It's that character is created by the people and the dive bars, and it's because it's the cheap places, and then places change because more folks move in and the rents go up.
A decent aesthetic. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, fair enough. How about just a decent aesthetic? I mean, we work on that too.
All this
about
new stuff they're building is trash.
Yeah. So we're working here on Capitol Hill. That's a great question. That is a great
How about the signs
question.
that are posted on the buildings give us a chance to go and make a comment rather than when they stick them on the building, it's already too late. I mean, I'd like to be able to say, no, you can't tear this building down in a meeting like this. I mean, it's bullshit.
So, if everyone heard what the person in the audience is saying is that his feeling is that the buildings that are being put up are awful and that there's not enough community feedback to the process
It's too late when those signs
and a sense
are
of
up.
disempowerment about it when it happens. So what would you say to that?
You do see those changes, and I mentioned Greenwood earlier. One of the reasons I love my neighborhood is because it has these small human-scale buildings that were built long before there was zoning or a zoning code, and it gives you a sense of place. Capitol Hill, we've been working really hard at trying to find a way to preserve the buildings that add character to a neighborhood, or preserve the parts of the building that add character, even if you don't preserve the whole building, by giving other incentives and the rest. And we're continually engaged in that experiment about how can you preserve. I'm talking about two different things. One is a truly historic building you can save. But then there's a building that just has stuff that's good that you want to save as part of it. And Capitol Hill is one of the places we're really working hard on that. We do have design review for new buildings, and we do have rules, and sometimes we put in so many rules about what the building should look like because we're scared of something bad that all you can end up with is something bad. So we really do have to, we continually work with neighborhoods on design review, historic preservation, character issues, investing in businesses. And I'm not going to tell you that I got a solution for this, because when neighborhoods start undergoing change, these are the tough ones we deal with. But we do try to work with neighborhoods around all of those elements to try to preserve the character of a neighborhood and enhance it.
Ed?
So I'm going to sound like a fossil, but when I worked for the city council at that time, particularly Jim Street, who was in the council, really worked hard on getting zoning codes right so that we don't end up with McMansions, which we're now ending up with on certain parts of Capitol Hill, or some of the other buildings that you talk about, that we really would have, buildings that were interesting architecturally. Something isn't working in our zoning code. Something is wrong. I really do think cities can drive buildings, houses, and the like that add to the architectural interest of the city. I can't tell you what's not working, but if I become mayor, I'm going to figure it out, because, I don't want this place to look like, some places I shouldn't mention, because then I'll get in trouble for trashing the suburbs.
Do you want to jump in?
So, we really are running low on time, and we want to say thank you to the candidates for working with us tonight in an alternative format. We thought that was appropriate tonight, and we appreciate your patience, and we appreciate you sitting on the uncomfortable deep couch, and we appreciate you putting up with our gonging. So, but we do have to sort of wrap it up tonight. It's unfortunate. We're having a good conversation. I'd like to have more, but we have to say good night. We are going to
We have our drink totals?
We're going to ask for our drink totals now. We're going to ask the candidates for your final question or their closing statement.
Great.
We'll get that, and while we're doing that, Alithia will get the drink totals. Quickly, I want to say thank you to Sandy. Sandy Cioffi's done a great job tonight. Thank you very much. Again, I want to thank Barboza, and I want to ask you to tip your bartenders generously, and I want to say thank you very much to Justin Carter of the Capitol Hill Seattle blog. Again, our co-host tonight. Justin's an enormous pleasure for us in Capitol Hill. So, thank you all. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Mayor McGinn. Thank you, Senator Murray, and so a final
So
statement.
of course, we had so much we wanted to talk about the arts, education, legalized pot, whether or not we're going to legalize prostitution, which is one of the questions people wanted me to ask tonight. But instead, I'm going to end with this. A lot of people feel like we now live in a country that has a reverse proposition. It used to be that a lot of leadership came from the federal government on the most important things that we needed to do, but now it's coming from the cities. So in the things that we dream, in some dark times in many ways politically, the things that probably most people in this room hold together because of the word that's on the stage, and even the liberal word, what are some things that we haven't talked about yet tonight? Just 1 or 2 sentences, sorry it's so brief, things you dream about that a new kind of urbanism, the leadership that can come from Seattle specifically. Tell us about that dream that you have. Be big.
Well, you make a really good point. There's a book that the Brookings Institution just put out, and believe me, this will be big, just bear with me. You know, the federal government has receded, and as the federal government has receded, it's cities who lead their regions that have become the innovators, the incubators of how government can be effective. And so I think our ability to lead as a city, our region, given we're so interconnected economically, is number one. It's the number one thing that I think we can do. Number two, you know, this is a city that cares about those who are most in need. So the balance of it being able to pay for them by having a vibrant business community and also
Sorry.
vibrant.
You almost got through the night without another gong. Oh, there's no more standing. There'll be no. We'll gong you if you keep standing.
It's the closing.
I will gong you if you keep standing. I will do it. No, it is.
It's the close. Okay.
Because I think
I will sit for the close.
Sorry about that.
Wow. Okay, this is the close. This city does lead. The state leads. You know, marijuana legalization, gay marriage, we're leading. Paid sick leave in the city, we're leading. We need to lead on figuring out how to widen the circle of prosperity so that service workers and child care workers and healthcare workers can be paid as much as they deserve because they do the hardest work that's out there. And I also think, and I think we need to lead on climate change, and that's why we're fighting those coal trains, and why we're going to be the first city to say we're going to divest from fossil fuels. We can set the standard. We really can. And I'd love to do that with you. Thank you.
So, and thank you for playing ball in that way. And now Ed reminded me that I didn't let him know it was the close. So what I'll do is let you have.
Say
that is correct. That is fair. You can gong me. We really are tight on time. But if both of you want one more sentence, you're welcome to do that.
Thank you. This has actually been fun. It's probably been the best forum we've been at. But that wasn't my close. I'm happy that this campaign, my campaign, has been endorsed from businesses from Molly Moon Ice Cream to businesses downtown. I'm happy that over 19 labor unions, including the 2 largest SEIUs, have endorsed me. I am happy that the Washington Conservation Voters, the largest environmental group, and Planned Parenthood gave me their sole endorsement. That's the kind of mayor I want to be. I want to bring people together around a common table who necessarily don't have things in common with each other. Thank you.
And would you like to tell us all the people you're happy about? To be fair.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be endorsed by civil rights leaders. I'm happy to be endorsed by artists and musicians. I'm happy to be endorsed by the Sierra Club. I'm happy to be endorsed by grocery store workers. And I'm happy to be endorsed by hotel and restaurant workers who have called me. You ready, Michael? The most progressive mayor in America.